I'm now going to open up the floor to some questions. We've already got a few in the Q&A function. So if I can ask the panelists to please turn their videos back on, just because it would be nice to see everybody. So the first question, I will kind of do them one by one, because I think otherwise it can be quite overwhelming. There are two questions directed, I think, at Richard. The first one asks, does sustainable climate action require at least partial delinking from the global economy in order to move away from extractivism, develop and establish food sovereignty? And then another one maybe, how do you change the mindsets of people, like you suggested, that we need alongside policy change?
Thank you very much for those questions. And the reality is, let me put it start by saying this: Africa doesn't exist in space, and Africa cannot delink itself from what is happening in the global community. But the reality is that Africa's context, what I always say, context matters. The contextual reality of African challenges are quite very unique, and therefore the solutions in moving towards a low emission pathway have to be contextualized within the African context, because the challenges are different from elsewhere. So what's my point? Africa needs to decarbonize and transition. Actually, as we're talking today, there is a debate on just transition. And what that means for Africa is that Africa, as I said, the reason why Africa is so vulnerable is because of the low socioeconomic base in which it is starting, and therefore people cannot afford the services and the goods to build resilient systems to be able to cope with these emergencies, either it's health emergency or economic emergency or climate emergency. And more importantly, just to state one fact here is, and I think Gregor said this very clearly, it is projected that energy decarbonization in line with an average of 2 degrees world scenario will result in net energy savings of 7 trillion in just about 2050. And this is part of an effort towards net zero emissions. So what's the point here? These are going to be opportunities that Africa needs to tap into, and Africa cannot disengage itself, because we are talking about total annual energy investments towards energy carbonization that are going to be huge here. And so Africa needs to leverage on that, and leverage in a way that can benefit people who are disengaged from the opportunities at the moment. Like Africa leapfrog from landlines to cell phones. Africa can actually leapfrog at the moment to then renewable energy that can reach people in communities to be able to start addressing not only electricity issue, but also value addition. That is how we can be able to move. On the one of mindsets, the reality is this. I always say that if you tell a hungry child that you gave him or her food yesterday, that means nothing to that child. That child is hungry at that moment and he or she needs food. That then means we must then be able to change our narrative of problems to a narrative of opportunities. That the challenges we face are disguised opportunities. That if we are able to engage our youth and retool their skills and support them, they can then start to turn a climate challenge. Either it is waste that is being turned to briquettes, or helping them to fabricate simple solar dryer that can help solve a problem. When we start to drive a narrative of opportunities, people will rally around it and they will become the implementers of that. But at the moment, it's a narrative of problems. It's a narrative of complaining sometimes, but we do not communicate opportunities with the same energy that we communicate problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard, for responding to those questions. So next question to Richard. This is actually to all the panelists, but I thought Richard might have an interesting response to this. What is your view on payments for loss and damage already experienced due to climate impacts? Is this something that African countries need to be pushing for? Yeah, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much. A good question. The reality is that that is part of the negotiation of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. There is what is called the Warsaw Mechanism on Loss and Damage. But this is my argument on this. Based on experience, yes, countries have to be supported and given what is agreed on the international mechanism. But my point is this. If you look at what I said earlier, The reason why Africa is so vulnerable, I mean, it's not just Africa that faces calamities like hurricanes and cyclones. As we're speaking today, United States is actually facing a hurricane that is causing damage. But when Africa witnessed Cyclone Idai and Kenneth in Southern Africa in 2019, what happened? Over 600 lives lost, infrastructure and property destroyed up to 3 billion. What is my point here? If people are not socio-economically empowered, even if you give them early warning, they will not be able to move. Where will they move to? Where will they have the means to move to? So the compensation for loss and damage, that money should be injected into areas that can actually be able to help empower people and at the same time also drive socio-economic opportunities. So compensation or not will not change anything that much if the money doesn't go, because as I said earlier, Africa is already contributing 20% of the adaptation needs in the continent from national budget. But where is the money going to? It's mostly for social endeavors, but that money needs to be leveraged as an investment opportunity. So climate action should be seen as an investment opportunity. So the issue is not just about compensation, which is a yes, but it's about when compensated, where should the resources be invested so that socio-economic resilience of communities can be built, leverage local structure. And I'd like to use that to touch the aspect on gender, which as Tello did answer this. One of the aspects is, in addition to gender inclusion, one of the biggest inclusion is also to focus in areas where the bulk of the community is involved. Agriculture. 80% of the food that is produced in Africa is mostly produced by women. They need to be climate proofed. They need to be supported. And if we want to really ensure gender inclusivity, we should actually channel investment into areas where the bulk of the women are actually engaged, and that is in agriculture. Can we be able to provide input and support into communal cooperatives where they can access at low interest rate or zero interest rate? Can we then be able to engage young people to devise input, whether it is biofertilizer or solar dryer, so that it can address the challenges of post-harvest losses that they are facing? Unless the debate moves beyond just policy and now actually to implementation, we might be in for a very long haul.
Thanks, Richard, for that response. So thank you, everyone. And for those in South Africa, have a good evening. And for those in the rest of the world, have a great day. Bye. Not do. Hey,